decided to join us for this reprise of what turned out to be a very popular session, as I mentioned at the end of the lunch of the last convention, a conversation on higher education, because that's what we're all engaged in, with chief academic officers. I'll repeat something that I said the last time, which is the reason that this session came about, was because as the planning committee was talking about who might be speakers, we had heard from a president of the university at lunch today. Last time we had a keynote from a president of the university, and the program committee said, yeah, but it's the provosts who really know what's going on. And so we should bring them to talk with them about the task at hand. So as you heard at lunch today, our guest played an important role in developing the Innovation Award and ensuring its inaugural season would be a success. So here again, but now with the third person who we found, are the three Phi Kappa Phi members who walk the tightrope, otherwise known as serving as chief academic administrators of their institution. Dr. G. Bourgeois, here on my left, is Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs for Academic Affairs at Texas State University. He's a historian, like that. He earned his undergraduate and master's degrees from LSU and his Ph.D. from the University of Cambridge. He's been at Texas State since 1990, making his way up the academic ladder, serving as department chair and director of the honors program before moving into the academic affairs office. He's been a provost for 5 years, and he went over to the dark side despite having been a state nominee for the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching's U.S. Professor of the Year. That's significant. He was initiated into Phi Kappa Phi at the installation of Chapter 325 in 2013. Next, Dr. Sara Varhus has been Vice President for Academic Affairs at Nazareth College in Rochester, New York since 2007. Before moving to Nazareth, she was Dean of Arts and Sciences and Director of the Honors Program in Liberal Studies at the State University of New York, Oswego. A graduate of Rockford College, she earned her Ph.D. in British Literature at the University of Rochester. She's currently president of the board, I found this interesting, Sara, of the Friends of the Women's Rights National Historical Park in Seneca Falls, New York, and has participated in both the ACE National Identification Program for the Advancement of Women in Higher Education and the HERS Seminar for Summer Institute for Women in Higher Education Administration. Sara was initiated as a faculty member in 1995 and was the driver of Nazareth College's petition for a chapter in 2012. And welcome, Dr. David Silva. We're glad you got here.
Me too.
He's been the Provost and Academic Vice President at Salem State University since March 2015. Prior to that, he spent 21 years at the University of Texas at Arlington, where he was Distinguished Teaching Professor of Linguistics, and since 2007, Vice Provost, first for Academic Affairs and then for Faculty Affairs. He was initiated into Phi Kappa Phi as a doctoral student at Cornell. His undergraduate degree is from Harvard. Dr. Silva earlier served Phi Kappa Phi as a regional representative from 2010 to 2012, and as a member of the Chapter Criteria Task Force in 2013. And I'm going to add just this little piece. At the first iteration of this provost panel, he was in the aisle asking a question because he was a provost wannabe. And now he is one. Anyway, this is a conversation. Thus, the room setting is less formal than it has been for the governance sessions of the convention. We're going to begin by looking at a little bit about their institutions, then at some of the key issues of higher education currently, and then we will invite you in the audience to go to those same microphones and ask questions as you will. But if we can begin by having you each tell us a little about your institution. Let's start with you, Gene.
Well, Texas State University is a very large public university. This fall will probably enroll 39,000 students. I have two of my colleagues here, so don't get too upset with that number. That's an increase of around 38,000 this past year. We're a Carnegie doctoral higher research institution. We're located in San Marcos primarily and also Round Rock, Texas, but San Marcos is located halfway in between Austin and San Antonio. So if you know anything about that part of the United States, it's the fastest growing metropolitan corridor in the United States. San Marcos was the United States' fastest growing city of cities with 50,000 or more population for 3 years running. And Texas State University really was the primary driver of that population increase. We offer a wealth of different kinds of degrees. We've expanded our academic offerings under President Trout. We are definitely primarily focused on face-to-face delivery. We're primarily a residential university, and by that I don't mean that we have 38,000 students living on campus. We've got about 7,000 beds, but probably around 20,000 students living in San Marcos. I say probably about 20,000 because we think it's even higher. But it's quite a bit different than when some others were there 10 or 20 years ago when we were a commuter college. We are proud to have graduated, probably, in the state of Texas at least, the only university to have graduated a President of the United States and a King. So, 36th President of the United States of America, Lyndon Baines Johnson, is an alum, and George Strait, the King of Country Music. Those are two of our most famous alums.
Thank you. Sara.
Okay, so Nazareth College is a small private comprehensive college in Rochester, New York. We enroll about 2,000 undergraduate students and 700 grad students. We're a member of the New American Colleges Course Consortium, and if you're familiar with that group, you would recognize that we reflect the characteristics of that group in that we offer a balance of professional programs as well as programs in the liberal arts and sciences, and we have a long-standing commitment to civic engagement. In the past 6 years, we've been implementing a new core curriculum that requires experiential learning and also engages students in a sort of individual student-elected sequence of courses at the very end that we call the integrated sequence. We call this the uncommon core, sort of a play on the term common core, obviously, because it challenges students to apply study in the liberal arts and sciences to varied questions, and then at the sort of exit of the program to integrate the work that they have done in the liberal arts and sciences and in the professional programs. We're just recently undertaking the establishment of a unit that we're calling the Center for Life's Work that actually is a natural evolution from the implementation of this new core curriculum, along with the growth of our Center for Civic Engagement and growth of our internship and other experiential learning opportunities. The Center for Life's Work will really engage students in making sort of thoughtful decisions, not only about their progress towards career, but also to kind of refining the values and commitments of their lives. Excuse me. So we're looking forward to the impact of that program and believe that it certainly is responsive to the needs and desires of incoming students and their parents, but also will engage students in that sort of higher value of a higher education. Also, in the past decade or so, we've developed a number of programs that I would say fall under the aegis of student support services or student success initiatives. Many of these are designed to serve certain populations of students, distinct groups of students with distinct needs. We've also developed a number of new degree programs, and I would say all of them have an applied focus. They've been programs in the sciences and the arts and sciences with an applied focus, growth in programs in health and human services. All of this has taken place in keeping with our strategic plan, which recognizes that if you're a tuition-dependent private college in the Northeast, you have some challenges to face. And we attribute for the second year running, we've had the most robust incoming freshman class in our history, after a few years prior to these 2 years where that certainly had not been the case. So we attribute our our success in attracting students to the institution to these innovations. But I think it's important to recognize that one can undertake innovations with a kind of pragmatic intent, addressing very real needs in the higher education environment, addressing the expressed needs and desires of incoming students. But it's also an opportunity for an institution, I think, to really reflect on its values, to reflect on the learning experience of the individual or groups of undergraduates and graduate students, so that the process of innovation, I think, brings us back to thinking about those priorities and what's important in the work that we do. I would also point out that innovation always is the process of bringing theory and vision together with reality, and it can be very messy, a messy process, and we learn as we go. So I'm looking forward to talking more about innovation in higher education and whatever other gnarly problems it might arise. David.
Well, I'm at Salem State University, which is located in Salem, Massachusetts, which I think most people know as home to the witch trials back in 1692, the 325th anniversary of which is coming up next year. So if you're in Salem, come join us. I'm not quite sure if that's really a selling point, but I'll make it happen. Our institution is one of 9 state universities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have about 9,500 students, so we are in between size. Unlike institutions in other parts of the country, including Texas, where, as Mary mentioned, I was for 21 years, we are struggling to keep our enrollments up. And indeed, I'm actually very proud to say that Salem State looks like we're going to be a little bit up in enrollment this coming fall, which in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is no mean feat, given that other state institutions are suffering. We live in the shadow of some of the most well-known institutions of higher learning in the country, and there's been a very long historical dependence upon those private institutions creating the intellectual capital that the region needs. However, it's important to understand the important place of a state university like Salem State as an engine for the region. The vast majority of students at Salem State University live or grew up within 50 miles of the institution, and over 85% of them will not only remain in Massachusetts, but will remain along the North Shore of Massachusetts. And that's that swath of land between Boston, up the coast toward New Hampshire, including the Merrimack Valley. It's also a challenge not to be part of the UMass system in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we're in that funny in-between place. Like many other institutions across the country, support from the state government has been on the wane, and we increasingly become dependent on tuition fees and some really idiosyncratic structural issues. So for example, tuition at state universities in Massachusetts is only $950 for the year. And it hasn't gone up in years and years and years. And when students get full tuition scholarships, they're very excited until they see the fees. Now, as you can well imagine, we cannot exist charging students only $950. And so we are in this awful position where we can technically say we are very low tuition. Feels a little bait and switch to me, but I'm not a legislator, and I wish there were legislators in the room listening. We have a mix of undergraduate and graduate programs. We have specializations not only in the arts and sciences, but also in the so-called helping professions, with some real strengths in nursing, social work, occupational therapy, and education. As a former Horace Mann normal school, Salem State has a long tradition of putting education front and center. We are looking to internationalize our curriculum, and so we have part of the current ACE comprehensive internationalization cohort. And that too is no mean feat, given that the majority of our students are first-generation students, middle to low income, many of whom can't imagine themselves leaving the United States, much less Massachusetts, maybe to New Hampshire for the age. So we are looking really to add tremendous value to the minds and hearts and life experience of our students. And we're in a unique position to do that. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Do you want to add anything, Pete, about the age programs or new programs at Texas State?
The newest programs have been in the STEM areas and health professions. And so up until 2007, Texas State didn't have engineering. And we created a school of engineering in 2007. We had a very generous gift from a couple of family who made their money in concrete. And from that point, 10 years ago to today, we have more than 1,000 majors in engineering. My highest baccalaureate degree proposal that went through our board of regents, and it's with our state coordinating board right now, is for a new baccalaureate degree in civil and environmental engineering and civil and environmental engineering technology. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs available currently in those two degree paths. We added a School of Nursing at Texas State University not that long ago. We're adding 2 new master's programs in nursing next year and then the following year. We've added an MA and an MS in Sustainability Studies, which I know a number of you also have engaged in those kinds of interdisciplinary programs. So in addition to 86 other traditional baccalaureate programs, 86 other traditional master's programs, the other big area has been in doctoral education. Texas State is, for Texans like to classify and group themselves differently than the other states because, of course, we're a republic of our own anyway. So we have our own classification for one of the 8 emerging research universities in the state of Texas. Houston, Texas Tech, UT Arlington, Texas State University. As part of that group, the state is looking to us to become 1 or 2 or 3 of the next premier research flagship universities in the state of Texas. To do that, you need more doctoral programs, and so we've been adding doctoral programs, especially in research. I guess our primary one, the most significant one for me, has been material sciences, engineering, and commercialization. And I will come back to that one later when we talk about interdisciplinary ways of creating these links between different units and innovation and commercialization in general.
Good. Thank you. And Sarah, what do you think is the biggest issue threatening higher education today?
You told us to think about that, and there's a bit of a list. I think that many institutions are engaged in what has been a history-long process of evolving and adjusting who we are and what we do to the current profile of our students. I think that Nazareth College was founded as a private college for Catholic women and served a very defined population of students. And as we've moved forward through time and our student body has changed dramatically, it's always difficult to know what is at the core and what is of the essence, and what perhaps we haven't kind of reflected on deeply enough. So it seems to me that just nationally, we still have a long way to go to think about the liberal arts scaffolding on which many of our institutions have been built. And I'm not by any means saying we reject that, but that's a model that evolved to serve distinct populations of people of certain demographic status, and we just have a different world out there right now, and I'm not sure that we're able to see ourselves clearly enough and respond kind of concisely enough to those changes in our environment. Another issue I would talk about is how the professoriate are prepared to teach in the vast range of institutions that we represent. It's a different matter to work at a Nazareth College as compared to an emerging research institution. And I'm not sure that the way we prepare people to take on all of this important work is subtly defined enough. So that's 2 things.
It sounds like one you picked as identity, really.
Yes.
Trying to figure out who the the school is and the changing trends.
I guess, so if you were going to, in 1920, going to the local private college that served your, going to Salem if you were a Norwegian American in that part of the state, you really didn't think too much about, the content of the curriculum or what it might be doing for you. I think now those questions are much more to the fore.
Thank you. David, what's threatening higher ed?
I think a lot of it is definitional, and I try not to be too dismayed with what I see as our attempts to devalue higher education. Calling into question, quite literally, the value of the degree, the value of the time spent, the value of the courses being taken, what they mean. Once I get aside that initial personal affront to me, having invested all my time in education, I start to see some of the challenge in that, because as we look at the changing professorate, we have to think more carefully about what it means to be a university and what kind of institution of higher education you're going to be. Having been in a place that was very research focused, emerging in that way, and moving into an institution that calls itself a teaching university, one of the things that we wrestle with in Salem State is, well, what's the definition of a teaching university? And in fact, during my interview for the position I'm at now, I'm the newbie, I was asked that question a lot. So, candidate, what's your definition of a teaching university? I said, you know what? I don't have a really good one. Why don't we work on that as a group? And I think you have to, because in community college, you're going to teach. You're going to teach a range of courses that are both academic and very, very workforce-oriented. At a research university, there's some clear expectation that you're going to be publishing lest you perish. So what happens in these in-between places where the faculty at Salem State very clearly have scholarly responsibilities, but they also are expected to advise, in many cases, upwards of 30, 40, 50 students. They also have service, and the standard load is a 4.4. That's asking a lot of the faculty, but they love it. But as provost, I think one of my biggest fears is burnout of the faculty. So what can I do to broker better working conditions, to put it in that blunt of a form? And where do we find that balance so that we continue to be focused on teaching and educating the people who live in our catchment area, but also having folks engaged in scholarship that is meaningful and that is as tied to their other responsibilities as possible. So we're talking a lot about integration of the scholarly endeavor, teaching, research, service, and advisement.
So I'm hearing in your two answers a difference between, it's somewhat cultural to the identity of your institution, what schools threaten, and a little bit, no matter what size institution. Is that fair? Perhaps, Jean, do you have anyone to add here?
Two big ones for me, I think, and one of them is the one that David just touched on. So I'm a history major, right? So in today's world, I'm valueless to the wider world out there. I mean nothing. I'm probably some kind of data point somewhere that said whatever my first salary was when I was teaching, that's the salary point for baccalaureates who have gotten a history degree. And I'm something else now. There's a lot of other history majors and English majors and sociology majors and anthropology majors and liberal arts majors and social science majors who actually are a lot like me. They didn't stay in academia and rise up, but they became managers. They became members of policy think tanks. They're all over the place. Their salaries now, I think, are a lot better than they were when they first got out. And I think they're a lot better now than when they first got out because they're building on those liberal arts foundations that you also spoke about. I worry that, again, everything is not necessarily dependent on getting a STEM degree, or I should add a STEAM degree. Just throw in the arts there for real innovation. I think all degrees are valuable. It's effectively what was the foundation for that degree that will really mean the most in that individual's lifetime earning capacity. But I do, as a provost at a very large university, worry about what I hear from the public, what I hear from legislators, what I hear from business leaders in terms of the value of especially baccalaureate degrees. And we can come back to that too. The other one is affordability. You've got to very much worry about that as a private. The publics have to worry about that more and more. There was an article that was on one of the news feeds yesterday about Illinois State. So whatever the number of decades ago, Illinois State's share of their operating budget from the state was 61%. Today it's 25%. Texas State's 20-something years ago was 55, 58%. Last year it was 26%. I think every provost and every president, especially of publics, because it's a little bit different for privates, but can say that because of those declining state appropriations, we have had to be ever and more worried about and more careful about our stewardship of public resources. And I think we all are. And I think those who are in private institutions are very, very good at stewarding their private resources. We are very, very mindful of that cost of attendance. Every day, every single day, something pops in my head about how much it's going to cost a student, not only in the fall of 16, but in the fall of 2020, the fall of 2025. Every day I think about tuition and fees and what the Texas legislature is going to do when they meet biennially beginning in January. And am I going to see tuition capped and another basically erosion in state appropriations? What kind of fee increases are we going to have? We're not quite as imbalanced, I think, as what you have in Salem State. But a library fee, an athletics fee, a bus fee, room and board, cost of textbooks. I try to think about all of those, but at a cost of attendance in the end, because in the end, that's the price that students are paying. And what does that mean for them? What does it mean for potential questions about access in the future? At the provost level, then, how that translates into actions that a university takes. As a provost, at least at Texas State, I'm the first among equals among the other VPs. So that when another VP comes to the table and says, we need to do this and increase the bus fee or the parking fee, or a residence hall rate, or an athletic director and athletics fee, I've got to be able to sit and listen and with the president weigh in on the impact that's going to have on the total cost of attendance. Because those fee increases do nothing for me to be able to hire more faculty, to increase the salaries of my faculty and my staff, to increase operating budgets for academic departments, to Dr. Halsey, pay for a new civil and environmental engineering degree program, which, as you said last night, is a very expensive program. It is. It's very, very expensive. I've got to be able to figure out how to pay for those things while keeping college affordable. So affordability is always probably up there with just how not you, but how the public views the value of a college education.
Well, one political party this season has made a big point about spiraling student debt and about changing the model for affordability with regard to tuition-free programs and public universities. But there's a complicator here to the private institutions, which don't look really bright on the horizon when it's been suggested that as many as a third of them will close by 2030. Sara, what do you think about affordability and higher ed finances?
First, I think I've been in the SUNY system and now have been in a private college for 10 years, and I think, interestingly, it doesn't feel that dramatically different with respect to budget in the sense that we really hold our resources in a trust to serve our audience, our population, whether the taxpayers have paid the money or whether at a place like Nazareth, students and their parents have gone into debt to pay the money. And there is also government money that's coming to us one way and another as well. So I don't think there's just this sort of bright line distinguishing our institutions. And we have certainly engaged in. So I like to say when a department is begging for X, Y, or Z, remember that 95 cents on every dollar that we spend has come from probably somebody who's gone into debt to provide us this money. I'm not sure, however, that the cost-cutting measures that we've undertaken at Nazareth would ever be dramatic enough to address a significant sort of discrepancy between what it costs us to run the institution and what sort of revenues we would be able to get through tuition. In other words, I'm not sure that the model, our model of education, which I think is a fine model of education, can be cut back and made affordable in a dramatic way without a significant change in how we deliver instruction or, some things would have to be on the table that have not been on the table thus far. I just don't see from the institutions that I've worked at a whole lot of waste. There certainly are things, if the faculty could get on one page, we could probably, try to cover fewer bases than we cover. There would be some savings there. I mean, there are some steps that should be taken, but I don't see a magic solution to affordability within the assumptions of the kind of education that we're offering on a residential campus with very little mediated online instruction, some but not much.
David, anything to add?
I can imagine everybody out there is in an institution that's running pretty lean right now. Is that true? Yeah. Can I get an amen? So we've cut costs, and yet we still bear the brunt of the unfunded mandate from the Commonwealth. So, for example, we found out this March that the amount we had to set aside for benefits was no longer going to be 31% of the base, but 35.17. Now, when your budget for salaries is as high as it is in academic affairs, that's a big chunk of change. That's a lot of adjuncts now that I can't hire, that we were planning on hiring, because that's the fungible part of my human resource budget. It has to do with hiring adjuncts. So that's making changes in how we are having to be more strategic with our scheduling. We're going to have to be more open to having classes that are a little bigger than they have been in the past. And the small class size has been a hallmark of the Salem State education. Okay, so we've tried to cut costs. We can't raise prices much more for fear of incurring the wrath of the public and the legislature. So we try to raise them as judiciously as possible in areas that make sense, but as my colleague said, a lot of that doesn't come funneling back to academic affairs. It goes to the things that those fees are paid for. So then we try to encourage more people to come, which is tough to do when you're in a part of the state where the college-age going population is shrinking as opposed to growing. So we've had to be innovative. And looking to support entrepreneurial activity by the faculty is something else I think is important for a provost to do. One of the best things about teaching at a university or working at a university, it's full of really smart people. One of the worst things about working at a university is it's full of really smart people. And it's a challenge when I get ideas coming at me and I can't say yes to all of them. And when I say no, it's not that I don't like you or that I don't like your idea, but it's not right for us right now when we look at the big picture. And one of the things I learned from going from faculty to administrator is that faculty have very narrow slices of view of the institution. And when you become a department chair, you sit at a table with other department chairs, and your scope is a little broader. And when you become a dean, that's a little broader. And as provost, it's pretty much as broad as it gets. We deal with parking issues. Why do we deal with parking issues? I don't know. Parking is not academic.
It's space.
It's space. It's space. How many of you are in an institution with a space crunch? Yeah, look at all those hands go up. We've tried, for example, at Salem State, in January, we started an innovative program. We're offering a Master of Social Work and a cohort model on Saturdays. Well, that's a challenge for us because contractually, our faculty, our core faculty, are not obliged to teach except Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. Anything beyond that is on a separate contract and separate pay. Okay, that's fine. So we worked with that. We were hoping to get 20 people into this cohort. We had to run 2 cohorts of 17. It was that popular. It's bringing in revenue. That's wonderful. But sometimes when I talk about revenue generation to faculty, I get these looks. Oh my gosh, you have to bring in revenue? Yeah, we have to bring in revenue. So what are your ideas? Let's work on these together. You know, I think a lot of us enter into academia thinking this great set of ideals that we're all rational human beings and we can sublimate our egos. Right? But in the end, a lot of this is a business, but it is a business with a very sensitive set of individuals who take advantage of what we have to offer. We must be sensitive to their circumstances. We must be sensitive to the fact that many of them are sensitive to price. We have to remain affordable. We have to remain relevant. That's a lot of constraints for us to deal with in a complex system. So,
Well, let's move off the topic of finances since it's not as
It makes us
uplifting as maybe. Let's talk about academics. That's your real area of expertise. One area of academic innovation on the rise is interdisciplinary studies programs. Though their success has been uneven, and yet those programs are often the first to be cut when an institution is budget challenged. To what do you attribute the resistance to interdisciplinary programs, and what do you think of them, and what might assure their success in higher education? Anybody? Who wants to start?
I'll take a stab. So I think interdisciplinary programs have been, they're like that cloud that you see on the horizon for decades. I mean, it's you know, interdisciplinary work has really been flourishing as long as I've been involved in higher education and administration, which has been quite a while. And I was reflecting on this question a bit too before today, and I do think that there are a number of things that sort of militate against the sort of sustainability of interdisciplinary programs. One is that if it's just a course and not a program, it's sometimes not clear where it fits into the big picture. Another reason that I think interdisciplinary work is fragile is that it's very dependent on the individuals who participate in those enterprises. So you might have a really wonderful interdisciplinary capstone seminar that will run for a few years, and then one of the faculty members leaves or no longer wants to do it, and you can't, it's difficult to just plug someone else in. So I think certainly at the level of faculty sharing in their teaching, there really are problems. But I think a big piece of it is interdisciplinary to what end? Where does it fit into the rest of the academic picture for students? I think interdisciplinary programs actually tend to be a little more stable because you have individuals who can still be doing their own disciplinary thing under the umbrella often of those individual programs. There are also increasing numbers of interdisciplinary Ph.D. programs where, you know, there might be an impact on higher education more broadly as long as those programs are churning out Ph.D.s in policy and health management or whatever. But few thoughts on interdisciplinary work.
I agree, and then I'll come back to a PhD program that again is relatively new at Texas State. I think it's easier at the graduate level to have sustainable interdisciplinary programs and not one-off courses. And perhaps you can do it at a smaller liberal arts, private, public institution. It's hard at something the size of Texas State University at the baccalaureate level because, again, we're talking about thousands of students, 2,000 majors in psychology, 2,000 majors in education, 2,000 majors in journalism, and those are just the discrete majors. At the graduate level, I do think it's a little easier. It is more sustainable. So in addition to that MA and MS in Sustainability Studies, 2 years ago we had some faculty in sociology, social work, psychology, long-term health care, and health and human performance. So cutting across 4 different colleges at Texas State who came together to create a master's degree in aging and dementia studies. Think about it. That cuts across and should probably cut across if you really want to attack and really do something innovative and revolutionary in improving healthcare for that population, it demands someone who's just not a long-term healthcare specialist or someone who's not just in social work or sociology. So, and that's a relatively new program, but I have very high hopes that it'll succeed. So then we turn to a PhD program where, for many of us, not in history, but I'm going to pick on the scientists, the engineers, the physics, the chemists in the room. I don't think there are too many in here, so I'm in family right here. So they all get these PhDs, and what we hear from industry is they've got their PhD and they can't work in industry, at least not immediately. Why not? Because they are so narrowly trained. They just, all they want to do is go into a lab and do their research. They have no concept about being able to bring their research to the marketplace in a timely fashion, meaning before you run out of the money to develop that product. That's true. That's absolutely true. And so companies such as GE, IBM, 3M, even Google, Apple, all of them, GE for years, have had basically their own campuses within those giant corporations where they take our research scientists, our new PhDs, our postdocs, and they retrain them in how to be those scientists in those industries. Well, why won't, or why couldn't, or why shouldn't we be doing that within the academy? So a novel PhD program where you take material scientists, physicists, and PChem or biochemists, and engineers, primarily for us it's been electrical engineers to date. And you have them enter, and they've got to have a proposal where they're going to lay out their dissertation topic. At the same time, they also have to produce a business plan. At the same time that they're going through their science, engineering, physics classes, they're also going to be doing something with some faculty from our School of Business, where they are basically learning what a business plan is, what profit and loss means. In other words, whatever they're doing in terms of research, there is an expectation that they get it, that if they're going to go work in the private sector, you've got to be able to translate that into something that is commercializable, that you're going to take that intellectual property and it's going to become a product or a service. That's been successful so far, and it's relatively new. Again, we've only been doing it for about 3 or 4 years, but I think it's the kind of successful, in this case, interdisciplinary program that also has a tangible connection to the private sector that I think the private sector needs. And I think for us at Texas State, we're excited to do that kind of work.
You know, at our institution, we're constrained to some extent into the degrees we can offer. By statute, we can offer doctoral programs, and the statute actually says, in cooperation with the University of Massachusetts. None of us have been able to figure out what in cooperation means. As a result, we try to be more strategic with our master's level offerings. But I've seen in the year and a half I've been at Salem State that one of the challenges has to do with the individuals in the room relying very heavily on the models and practices in which they were trained. And what I'm seeing is a lot of discussion about creating master's programs that push students to doctoral programs. I would argue those aren't our students. We need master's programs that push students back into the workforce for supervisory positions, for planning positions, for research and development types of positions that might not require a doctoral degree. This is a challenge in as much as, I'll tell a story. I was in a room with a group of faculty and we were talking about this master's degree that's been on the table for many years apparently. Well, it predates my arrival by several years. And at one point I said, it sounds like what we really need here is not only a curriculum, but a business plan. And I got blank stares. What do you mean a business plan? Well, what is this going to cost us? What are we going to bring in? And how are you going to maybe mix and match some of the coursework so you have some separable credentials and you can start to stack them? But with that kind of training, people won't be able to apply for PhD programs. And I said, that's okay, right? How many of our students go on to PhD programs in insert name of discipline here? Not a lot. Well, then why are we trying to recreate your PhD program here? It was a very frustrating conversation. But it brought to mind the fact that as educators, we need to continue to educate ourselves. I would love to have a faculty training course on entrepreneurship, on how to write a business plan for a history major, or a linguistics major, or a philosophy major, just to pick on a few people in the room. We need to let the love of learning rule humanity, man. And we need to embrace our lifelong learning. I mean, and maybe as a society, that's part of our relevance. We're the tip of that spear on our campuses. And why not have a Phi Kappa Phi academic business plan day? I think I just thought of an activity.
Yeah, you did.
There we go.
One of my experiences when I was in your position was a small private institution trying to create a new master's program, but not looking around within itself to see what it could build on that it already had, thinking that it had to create from the blank slate, and wasting resources that it didn't have. And I think it's that notion of prior model that you were talking about that really is holding a lot of innovation back. Let's talk about honors education, because I know a couple of you at least have been directors of honors programs. We have a close relationship with honors education, particularly our partnership with the National Collegiate Honors Council and our shared support of academic excellence. Any comments about the role of honors education going forward?
Going forward, I think, similar to some of the issues I think that have come up during this meeting of the convention in terms of membership, I think honors colleges in part can suffer from, at least for Texas State's model, which is not a degree plan model. You have a model that's based upon small seminar-based interdisciplinary courses. When the state of Texas is demanding fewer and fewer hours per academic degree, 120 hours, and we all have to get down to that level unless you're engineering, teacher cert, or some other excluded degree. So how do you attract the honors student? I do this publicly, and I use my son as an example. He entered Texas State in 2010. A really smart kid decided to major in finance, joined the honors program. He grew up on campus back when, in part, I was directing the honors program. So he saw that. He saw the different faculty and the different students coming from all across campus with all of these innovative, energetic ideas coming together in these classes. Well, you become a finance major. As a freshman, because he also came in with AP credits, that meant that, not a lot, but enough of the core curriculum courses that we typically offer in the honors program, Renee couldn't take. He was able to take a B-Law class, so an honors B-Law section, taught by Alexis Stokes, young woman with a JD from Harvard. Afterwards, he says, you know what? This is a real university. It's like, yeah, Renee, Texas State is a real university. I know that. I think what he was telling me is that I guess he expected something of that level to be what he would be taking as a freshman. And he did. So he was able to take that B-Law class. He was able to take a couple of other classes in the honors curriculum, but because he already had the history, the English, the philosophy, by the time he got to his sophomore year, really his junior year, there weren't any finance. I think there was maybe one economics class that he could take. There weren't basically any other advanced finance classes that he could take to fit into his finance degree program. More troubling for me, it also meant that even if there were those, he would then have to figure out with our directors and our faculty how he could basically do the honors thesis, pre-thesis, and then the honors thesis class to count for finance. That probably would have meant the provost stepping in and kind of working with those faculty members to allow him to do that. But he didn't graduate in honors. He couldn't graduate in honors. It was impossible for him, an outstanding student, to graduate in honors. So since then, I've asked our honors director, and we're doing strategic planning this year, to work on a campus-wide effort to have, in our case, more department-specific honors courses. I think, again, for us, and I know that all of your institutions are all different in some respects, but for Texas State, it's going to have to be that we offer more department-specific honors courses, in my opinion, to keep this honors thing going and to make it as vibrant and robust as it can be. I wish it had been there for my son before he graduated in 2013.
So honors programs are of all sizes, shapes, descriptions. They can be many different things. When I directed the honors program at SUNY at Oswego, that was a period when many state comprehensive institutions were putting up honors programs in part to attract stronger students. It very much was, from the point of view of the president and the vice president for enrollment management, a recruitment tool. And that's not to be sneezed at by any means, but as honors director, I really saw it as an opportunity to sort of beta test really interesting interdisciplinary and other sort of innovative academic practices. And we actually did model some things in the honors program that then filtered out into the general education program of the whole institution. So, I think having an honors program, or whatever you call it, a smaller unit where you can sort of test run innovations is a really neat thing. I do think honors programs should somehow distill and reflect a value of the institution and sort of an understanding that there might be a distinct population of students who would be better served by an alternative to the very strong standard issue curriculum that the institution offers to the students as a whole. So at Nazareth, the honors program is primarily an opportunity for students to engage in an interdisciplinary research project. And it involves students from the professional schools as well as the College of Arts and Sciences. And most of those projects do blend the professional and the liberal arts. So it's, not every place would have an honors program that looks like that, but it's sort of the right, kind of the right emphasis for Nazareth and the students that we serve. So, I think it's sort of let 1,000 flowers bloom as far as honors programs models go, and I really think that they're great assets for institutions on the whole.
Do you have an honors program in Salem State?
We do have an honors program, and I would say the challenges we face are capacity. I think we could have more students in our honors program, but it requires an engagement of faculty that is difficult to afford at this point in time. The kind of time that it would take to go into getting the students engaged for those honors capstone projects. I guess more troubling to me as I looked at I've been to a couple of honors college events, or honors program events now, is how our honors program, the population of our honors program does not reasonably reflect that of our larger student body. Indeed, the honors program looks a lot like our faculty. And our faculty, the makeup of our faculty does not reflect our student body. And that concerns me. This year, as provost, I took it upon myself to identify students who would be eligible for entering, new students who would apply and be accepted, who would be eligible for entry into the honors program, but chose not to. And I sent them a letter saying, hey, you're eligible for the honors program, but you didn't sign up. Here's some information. You should look into this. I think you're ready for it. And we had 2 people. That's good. It's a start. But I would like to make sure that when we put programs like that forward, we make sure that every student who is ready for it feels invited and welcomed. And I don't think that's always the case on campuses, because honors programs can be seen as some purview of exclusivity. And also to make sure that our requirements for an honors program are academically strong, but not so structurally rigorous that very talented students who could and should be pursuing honors education can't get there because of some structural impediment. And so what I find is happening is that a very specific group of students on our campus do very well in the honors program, and they're in nursing. It's a very high demand program. It's easily our most difficult in terms of entry. We can't grow it because we have some structural capacities of clinical placements and simulation labs and whatnot. But there's a disproportionate number of nursing students in our honors program because nursing has figured out a way to make it work, which is great for nursing. how do we propagate that over the other 30 departments now? It's a challenge.
They can if they want to,
Yeah.
but it doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work, and for a small department, our economics department is 4 people. It's tough to do a lot with a faculty of 4.
So as the provost, I control the big pot of money on campus. And so for the cost, though, again, what the campus has heard and what they will hear again is that, again, if you want to have an honest program that has class sizes of 16, and as you can imagine, in a university will have 39,000 students, that's not the average, that's not the normal in Texas State University. But we support that. I want that. And so the commitment is out of my office to fund that. But that means when you start talking to an academic chair or a school director, that they have to understand that we're willing to fund that. But it is going to mean taking someone, a tenure line or a tenure track faculty member probably, out of a classroom, that if they're teaching at the lower division level, they may be teaching 400 students there in that class, or an advanced level class of 50, 25, or 150. They have to understand that it's okay to do that. The academic affairs leadership says, yes, we want you to do that. Yes, you'll have to take that faculty member out. Let them go teach that interdisciplinary seminar. It's okay. The problem is, though, can they find someone else to teach that section that otherwise so-and-so would have been teaching? Those are things that can be overcome. I do think for us, the more structural problem, again, with our program, which is effectively an 18-hour plus thesis program, is with that constriction of degrees going down to 120 hours, it's making sure that those advanced classes that your brightest students can take will count for their honors degree, basically.
I want to give the audience a chance to go to the microphones if you have questions. I've got some more questions here, but please, if you do, approach the mics. And for in the time being, we'll talk about your experience on the Innovation Committee. What you learn and what you think about the whole process, Gene.
It was fun. Being able to see dozens and dozens of applications from institutions across the United States, private and public, small and large, with different sorts of delivery models around there, different missions, was very cool. You saw innovation and a spirit of discovery being sort of pushed out in their own institutional fabric, however it fit for their institutions, in many different ways that I've kind of drawn inspiration from. What we look for usually when you're serving on these kinds of panels is what can you borrow, not plagiarize, but borrow with proper citations. What can you steal? What can you emulate? What can you basically mimic? At Texas State, we're doing a lot of different things. We have 3-day boot camps. We have business plan competitions. We have maker spaces. We have a research park that has a business incubator. So you have all of these different things. But one thing I learned that we don't have, that some other institutions have, even of our size, is something that is campus-wide. We don't have that. Business plans run out of the B School. The 3-day boot camps, B School and out of science and engineering. The maker spaces, for now, tend to be in the arts areas and also in engineering and science areas. We're creating new learning commons. So we have that, but we don't have the campus-wide integration or the campus-wide organization or the campus-wide organizing medium. So I'm asking us, with this strategic plan, to think about that, to gather together all of the innovation ideas or activities that we're currently doing, but I need recommendations about how they can be better, I think, linked together. They don't have to be, but that's a planning exercise. And then, as you saw with the winner, Tulane University's project, an incubator and a research park is not a place where you are creating innovation in the social justice arena. That's not where it's happening. 3D boot camps typically are not for those kinds of innovative ideas or seed ideas. As a historian, as someone from the liberal arts, it was like, damn, that's what we need to be doing. That's part of what innovation is. We need to be having students, in fact, if you do this, but they're doing it in informal ways. They do it through service learning. They do it through civic engagement. So why not bring them back in, hopefully, into something at Texas State where you can kind of mimic, again, what Tulane University is doing, where you do have student teams with faculty and their engagement projects that basically represent startup companies or startup services and processes, and you can leverage that out to your community. So I hope to be able to change what we're doing in Texas State and move it a little bit away from just the B school and science and engineering and what all our students and faculty are doing with apps, and bring in some of the other social workers, sociologists, historians, and anthropologists.
I want to give a plug now to our website before we ask Sara and David to weigh in on this question, because you can find the portfolios of the 6 semi-finalist institutions in the innovation section of the website, and those institutions were asked to present in 25 pages or less the project that they had brought forward, and they are really worth looking at because they're very, very different, aren't they?
They are indeed, and it truly was an honor to read. I think it was something like 85 short preliminary proposals, and I actually went through just in the last week and sort of quickly skimmed through those 85, and it is interesting. The largest group now there are many ways to divide these into categories, and they're overlapping, proposals that might fall in several categories, but the largest category were programs, student support programs or student success programs in all manner of definition, serving specific populations of students. Often technology would cut across that, or other forms of innovation. But then the second category was the sort of innovation center idea. Not always engaging sort of social innovation, but usually some outreach into the community, even if it was sort of technology transfer kind of innovation. So clearly that's a significant movement across the country. And I think what's so strong about the Tulane example is that it is connected to a fundamental value and sort of culture of the institution. So it does have that, you have the sense that it is, it has a sort of university-wide connection and identity. I think the struggle with innovation often is that innovation will occur in an honors program or a center for student success or the advising office, or you name it, a particular department on campus. The challenge is to kind of broaden that engagement to a wider constituency on a campus. It's just a struggle to institutionalize something that is sort of cutting edge. So I mentioned that at Nazareth we're establishing this Center for Life's Work, which really is not a career center. It's intended to be an opportunity where students will be challenged to really be entrepreneurial about their own skills and desires and hopes. And the only way this will work is if the faculty and advisors across campus can sort of develop some passion for this enterprise and sort of reinforce what students are learning from their coaches in the Center for Life's Work. So I think that's the innovation will always on a campus, if you want to have a broad impact, is going to have to cut across all kinds of boundaries and climb into some silos, I guess.
So I was really privileged to be sitting in the room. Imagine cigars and brandy and clouds of smoke. And when I was a regional representative, I think that was that 2 years we were called that. We were talking about these chapters of merit, right? You've all seen that, and some of you are being recognized as such and whatnot. And it felt too mechanistic. It was giving awards to chapters who did everything a chapter was supposed to do. And I think that's really important. I'm not downplaying that at all. But we came to a realization as a group that we needed to do something that really celebrated innovation. We were an honor society. We were an honor society that was looking to support this notion of lifelong learning, the vitality of learning as a transformational experience, And how do we transform the transformational experience? What I found most striking about the 80-some-odd pre-proposals that we read were how many of them were truly innovative, and honestly, how many of them thought they were innovative, but they weren't. And for me, that was a real wake-up call, because it made me think that unless we see what each of us are doing, we will not know where we really stand and maybe how we're really doing. I think one of the challenges of being a provost is linguistic, and that's the power of we. But we is a funny word in English, because we, in English, unlike in some other languages, a little linguistic lesson here from the professor, is both inclusive and exclusive. Right? I can say, we gave an award. We read the proposals. You didn't read proposals. We read proposals. That's the exclusive we. And on the campus, it's very easy for a department chair or a dean or a faculty to say, we do this and we do that in our students. But as a provost, the challenge is getting everybody to think that our students doesn't mean our students. It means our students. We are in this together. And I think the ones that really floated to the top were the ones in which we got a sense of real institutional buy-in because they were integrated into the fabric of the campus culture. And I think that's where a provost, working alongside a president and other VPs, that team becomes very important. That really is the essence of leadership. And I want to second Mary's plug about going to the website, because when we were putting this idea together, it was very important for us that we made sure that the process allowed we all to learn from it. So you all have a homework assignment. And then to go to that website, read those finalists' dossiers. And you know, I think it was great to limit it to 25 pages, because you've all read a thesis, right? If it doesn't happen in the first 25 pages, it ain't happening, right? So it's doable. We've made the task doable for you. But read them, learn from them, grow from them, show them to your colleagues, and figure out how your we might have something in common with somebody else's we. And then I could take that a step further. Start inviting each other to your campuses. I have this crazy idea that I want to invite the folks from Tulane up to Salem State. I wish I could afford it. Sorry, guys.
I was particularly gratified, just a side comment, but as the manager of this whole process, first let me thank you all and Dr. Denzine for the very thoughtful process you went through in determining the criteria. And then that wasn't enough. You all said, can we stay involved somehow? So it was pretty obvious that they should become the screening committee as well, because they knew what they were looking for. But I was particularly gratified, as I started to say, by the schools who wrote. We wrote every school who didn't make the semifinalist when that decision was made, and that tier in the process was reached, and said, thank you for your application. We were grateful to see so many wonderful ideas, and we encourage you to apply the next round. And a number of comments I got back from the point people on various campuses who said, wow, we will. Just thanks for the opportunity to go around our campus and find what it is that we wanted to lift up.
Yes.
And that's really what this is about. It's really about the uplift of the good ideas that are going on campuses. Now, I realize we were incredibly broad in what we were, because we refused to pin down innovation. And I see you nodding, Dr. Denzine, but in fact, we just wouldn't do that, and we refused to give any examples, because the minute we started giving examples, we knew we'd steer the competition in a certain direction. And so they, in fact, did read all of those applications from one end of the country to the other with wildly different ideas and in many, many different categories. And it was exciting, I think.
It was fun. It also reminded me, I mean, you heard my background at LSU and at Cambridge. And from those two different places, as I was reading about all of these innovation mashups in spaces and everything, and I thought back, you know, at LSU, a long time ago, there used to be an LSU union, and I know the union is still there, but that was really the place where a lot of different people, students and faculty and staff, gathered to eat. And they shared ideas. Those spaces have disappeared in our institutions and places. There's a very famous building at MIT where, because of circumstances, they had to start mashing together different scientists and social scientists and art folk and others into a building. It wasn't as easy to navigate as some of the buildings are today, but we are guilty of building all of these discipline-specific buildings. In other words, we're now having to undo what we've been doing for the past 30 or 40 years, and that is creating all these discrete spaces, possibly hardening the silos, but hopefully doing some other things to break those down. And I wonder, we have a building on our campus that was built 15 years ago, roughly. In one half, it's science and engineering, physics, engineering technology. The other half is art and design. Those are the two units, the two disciplines with a lot of other disciplines within science and engineering that are now coming together and creating all of these great ideas. You know what separates them? A wall that you cannot get through. There are no corridors running through the two sides of that building. So we'll create some other kind of space for them somewhere else where they can all get together and then share these wonderful ideas. I mean, the creativity that goes into artwork, into communication, art design, is very similar to what I see going on in the semiconductor lithography labs. There's some differences, but to the historian, a lot of that looks alike.
Well, and design thinking, what we heard President Fitz talking about, really the core of the Taylor Center's work is, and there's a wonderful story in their portfolio about a graduate doctorate student, I think, who maybe you remember this, she didn't know what to do her dissertation on, and worked with some people and came up with an entirely different idea, which gave her the impetus not only to have a project, but to be excited about it, because she wasn't, how that process works. You're not always as passionate about what you need to be when looking for a research goal.
So I do think that questions and challenges do sort of naturally cause people to move beyond the boundaries of their disciplines. But the irony is that our institutions are so dependent on, to administer the darn places, on the departmental structure. And so much attaches to that, I have not been able to figure out an easy alternative or pathway beyond that structure. And in a sense, the academic department defined by discipline is a huge resource, because people have, perhaps faculty will have a commitment to the quality and standards of their discipline, in a very selfless way much of the time. So there's a huge reservoir of commitment and I think expertise that we would be foolish to just dismiss in the academic department. But boy, I just don't see with the kind of structure we have that we can achieve everything that we might be in the future. So that'll be I'm retiring at the end of December, so whoever succeeds me can figure out this departmental thing. But.
Okay, so faculty